Welcome to the Vine Resources podcast show. Welcome to another edition of the Vine Resources podcast show. I'm delighted to have with us Evgenij Tovba. Evgenij is the CTO of VIS.X in Berlin, Germany. Evgenij, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me on the show.
You're more than welcome. No, before we start, Evgenij, we were talking about what you like to how you pronounce your name, and you said most people call you Jeff in Germany. Tell us the story.
Yeah, right. So Evgenij is originally a Russian name, and it's not a very common one in Germany, where I grew up, basically. And I think it was in elementary school where people had problems to pronounce the name, and they eventually gave me that nickname, Jeff, and they call me Jeff ever since, so yeah.
There it is. Thank you so much. And look, can you share with our listeners, tell us a little bit about your story, a little bit about your company and yourself. That'd be great to hear.
Yeah, sure. So about the company, VIS.X was founded in 2001, so quite some time ago, and was one of the first players in the market to do mobile advertising and mobile marketing. So back then it was mainly around text messaging, which you don't get to advertise on very often these days. And as the mobile landscape evolved and smartphones came into play, and feature phones and then smartphones, obviously VIS.X also changed its positioning a little bit. And fast forward to the last few years here at VIS.X, VIS.X is now focusing on mobile first advertising. That means specifically in the programmatic landscape, which has grown and evolved in the last few years massively. And we've recently launched our own programmatic platform, an SSP, which we call VIS.X. And that's one of the biggest topics in our company right now. Briefly about myself. So I started my career probably, I'd say around 12, 13, 14 years ago in the telephony industry, classical telephony industry, which eventually changed to voice over IP very quickly at that time. And over a few years later, I came to VIS.X, and that was in 2009. So I'm with the company for 8.5, almost 9 years now. And that's basically about myself.
Thank you. And you're the CTO there, and you have about 80 employees spread over a number of countries, mainly in Europe. Is that right?
That's correct. So we have around 35 to 40 employees here in Berlin, including all of the IT department, the finance department, HR, and similar. And all of the other colleagues are spread across the different offices in Europe, which we have in the UK, in Spain, Austria, and in Warsaw as well, in Poland.
Tell us what a typical day in the business looks like for you as the CTO. Love to hear it.
Oh yeah, sure. So as I just mentioned, we've just launched our own technology platform, which was a pretty exciting project for us in the last year. And along with the launch of the platform, we also adjusted the corporate design and corporate identity of VIS.X as a whole to reflect that change. And as you can imagine, that was quite a big project as well, and this was in the main focus in the last year. And so my day-to-day work obviously evolves around all of these projects, and as well as integrating the platform now is one of the key things that we do. But besides that, the typical day-to-day business, I think it looks similar to other managers. So you have your project meetings in the beginning of the week, where you get together with your colleagues and peers, and you discuss the progress and the next steps and these things. And at the end of the week, I conduct one-to-ones with all of my peers and directs, and
Can you share with us perhaps someone who's had an impact on you as a leader?
Oh, it's probably difficult to say that there was only one person. I believe it's similar to other people that you have different types of learning curves in your career and in your personal life as well. So I had the opportunity to work with a lot of great people who influenced me quite a lot in different stages of my personal development. So I had people who influenced me on a technical level to help me to get better as a developer back then, to understand architecture in a much better way, to go through all the disciplines of networking in terms of technical networking, that's not social networking, and yeah, eventually changed as well to people who influenced me a lot on the business side of things and how to negotiate, how to deal with managerial challenges and these kind of things. And I'm happy that there were a lot of people already in the past, and I hope there will be more to come. So I keep learning from different people, I'd say.
Tell me about employee engagement at Yock. What are you guys doing from the top to keep everyone engaged?
That's a good question. So I think nowadays the landscape of employment changed quite a bit, and we think that people would love to somehow leave footprints, right? And they love to get more responsibility. And I believe this is what we do, what we try to do, to give people more responsibility to challenge their own tasks and define how their workday looks like in a more self-employed way, let's say. And I believe this helps them to shape somehow their day-to-day work, and this will make them motivated much more than just giving orders and ask to execute on certain things, and rather have them shape their work.
What do you think is perhaps the biggest challenge facing business leaders right now?
So I believe that as I just said, so basically the landscape changes a little bit, and people want to get this responsibility, and that I think one of the biggest challenges that we as leaders have to face is to be able to give employees a sense and a meaning in the work they do. So, if you would just have, let's say, a regular job that where you just get some orders to execute, that is not very senseful usually to people. So they want to see a higher sense in what they do and the vision where they can go and can look at in the future. And this will somehow, I believe, also make things better for them.
Is there a piece of business advice that you've received over the years that you could share with us?
I think in that regard specifically, I could say one of the best advices I've got was that we need to create, as leaders, we need to create a vision for our company or for our department. It doesn't have to necessarily be a vision that is, end the world hunger or achieve world peace or something like that. It can be a smaller thing. It can be, for example, in the technical department, it can be a vision that we try to build the best platform for users to make their day-to-day work much easier or something like that. And I think this was one of the best advices I got recently, and it makes totally sense to me. And this is, I believe, also sensible for the colleagues here.
How are you helping a new employee understand the culture of the business at Yock?
So in the beginning, so when I started my role as a director here, eventually becoming a CTO as well, we started doing onboarding sessions as you would have in a normal company routine. So you would get new people to onboard, to understand the business, understand how we work together, etc., etc. And recently we decided that we need to develop certain values that the company stands for, right? So how do we work together? What are we trying to achieve? It's I believe if we communicate through values and through more abstract understanding of collaboration, we can achieve a much better culture in the company to work together.
And what perhaps is the one mistake you've witnessed leaders making more frequently than others?
So as a leader, I believe there's one big challenge that every leader is facing, and is I don't know if I can call it that way. I would call it probably the communication gap. So one of the big things that a leader has to do, in my opinion, is to bridge this communication gap between their peers, their direct reports, and their managers as well, and somehow bring all the things together that somehow play a role in their work. And this is probably one of the bigger challenges, especially when you go to when you look into bigger organizations with several hierarchies, with different responsibilities and different setups. This communication gap can become a very, very difficult thing.
And how do you see your industry changing in the future? And it is changing fast, of course. And how do you think it's going to affect your ability to attract and hire the best talent?
That's a very good question. So, in fact, in the advertising space, the industry is just right now changing very, very quickly to a programmatic buying and programmatic selling approach. So, trading media becomes done in a programmatic and an automated way, let's say. And this is a transformation of a classical ad net sales to a programmatic-driven advertising, and that requires a lot of new technology, a lot of know-how, a lot of new techniques to learn, and it changes the way our operations work daily. And I believe that in our case, implementing a new platform, which we did last year, was a very, very important step to maintain a competitive approach, not only in terms of the market itself and to our clients and competitors as well, but also for attracting new talent. So it's probably much more interesting for a talented software developer to start in a company where you build a very nice and interesting, useful product, and you have the ability to extend this functionality, to extend the way how it works, and to make it better for people to use, etc., etc. So I believe new platforms and smarter decisions every day are also contributing to a very interesting workplace for our colleagues. And I hope that all of this change will somehow attract more people and make them feel that they contribute to somewhat, slightly bigger than the average job.
Now, we didn't speak about this before, but I know obviously as a non-native German, what's the business language at the office? Is it English? Is it German? How are you communicating?
It's in fact it's mixed. So I believe most of the time, personally, I communicate in English because we have our offices in different countries, and therefore English is the main language. We also have a very multicultural team here. So we have, I believe I heard recently we have around 20 different nationalities in the company with just 80 people. I think it's the case for many companies right now that there's a big mix. And in fact, I believe in the IT, less than half of the guys actually speak German very well. So in the IT, definitely it's English.
Fantastic. And if you were having your time again and you were giving your 20-year-old self advice, what's the one piece of advice you'd give yourself now?
That's a good one. I would probably say if I look back, I wouldn't do anything different. So what I would tell myself if I would be 20 years old again, I would probably say go on learning. That will be probably the most important thing. I realize now that if you continue to learn, you continue to grow personally and also work-wise. And I guess go on learning is the best advice. Yeah.
Thank you so much for that. And look, thanks so much for sharing your story. What's the best way for people to find out more about Yok, to connect with Yok, or to connect with yourself?
I think the best way to find out more about Yok is to just see our new website that we relaunched recently. It is yok.com, that's yoc.com. And if you want to get in touch with me directly, they can just send me an email. It's jeff@yok.com, or contact me on LinkedIn or the usual channels probably. Yeah.
Thanks so much for sharing the story, and hope to speak to you again soon.
All right, thanks. Thanks for having me on the show.